Hi everybody, this is Raphael from Ohio Tropics. Do you want to learn how to grow a monstrously huge Monstera Deliciosa? Well, you better check out this video. There are several important factors that you need to keep in mind when growing this beautiful plant. This is a super easy plant. It's one of the easiest plants, I think, in my opinion, to grow. But you have to have a few things in mind in order to be able to grow this plant quickly and large and beautiful. Isn't this gorgeous? It's just amazing. So the first and most important factor that I want to emphasize is light. Light is probably one of the most misunderstood and unappreciated aspect of growing your plant. So when you get one of these plants, and I'm going to show you what this particular plant looked like a couple years ago. It was probably 4 or 5 times smaller than it is right now. This grew so quickly. So if you want to learn how to do that yourself in your own home, please keep watching this video. I'll show you exactly how. Back to light. So when you buy this plant, it absolutely needs to be in front of a window. When it comes to any houseplant, there are very, very few houseplants that will thrive when placed too far from a window. If you want your plants to really thrive, they need to be in front of a window. Plain and simple. No questions, no compromising. So I actually have this particular plant growing in front of a large eastern window. It's actually a wall of windows, which is amazing for this plant. I actually only have a couple plants in front of this window because this one got so big. I have a rubber plant behind it. But these plants need to be within 1 to 2 feet, I would say, of a window. So they do like bright, indirect light, okay? A little bit of sunshine is fine. A little bit of morning sunshine would be gentle enough for these plants. So an eastern window, depending on your conditions, depending on where you live. I live up in northern hemisphere in Ohio, and the sunshine in the morning is very, very appreciated, especially in the darker winter months. So keep that in mind. I have this right in front of the window, just barely in front of it so that the leaves don't touch the window. Light is the most important factor in plant growth. If you stick your plant and shove it in a dark corner somewhere, even a few feet from a window, it's not going to do as well. It's as simple as that, okay? So my plant here has tons of aerial roots, okay? Look at all the aerial roots there. And I'll show you exactly how big and beautiful this plant is. Isn't it gorgeous? So the plants will start off growing at the base of a tree. They'll attach onto the tree with the aerial roots and just climb up the tree. So you can imagine growing under a tree, they'll receive bright indirect light and maybe filtered or dappled sunshine. So they don't like to be cooking in sun all day, but at the same time, they need enough light. So make sure that you keep your plant in front of a window. The second important aspect of being able to grow a gorgeous Monstera Deliciosa is the soil, okay? It's important to have a really aerated, porous soil mix. These plants do really well in that type of mix. They require really sharp drainage, and they will respond very well if you have your light situation under control and an awesome soil mix, and I'll talk about watering in a little bit as well. As far as the soil mix that I recommend for this plant, so I simply use about 2 parts of Miracle Gro Potting mix, and I'll include a link in the description below of the materials that I like to use for the potting mix materials that I like to use for this plant, as well as the fertilizer that I'm about to speak to shortly, okay? 2 parts of Miracle Gro Potting mix. You could really use any potting mix as long as it's a high quality potting mix. And then I mix in 1 part of number 3 size perlite. So number 3 size perlite is actually a little bit bigger, quite a bit bigger than the standard, small bags of perlite that you might be used to. So 2 parts of the Miracle Gro Potting mix and 1 part of the number 3 perlite. You will get a very chunky, very well drained, very aerated soil that these plants love. and thrive on. So I'll recommend that type of potting mix, okay? And also, I'll talk about the fertilizer. That's another important aspect of being able to grow your plants. In order to have your plants thrive, you need a combination of good light, good soil, good watering practices, and fertilization, and of course, patience, right? I preach the holistic view. You can't just have one portion of plant care correct. You need all of those portions together in order to have your plants thrive, okay? Let me talk about the fertilizer I use as well, and then I'll go into how I water, okay? Fertilizer I use is actually an amazing fertilizer that I just switched to a few months ago. It's called Miracle Gro. The link will be in the description of the video as well. It's an amazing fertilizer. It's a complete fertilizer that has all the micro and macronutrients necessary for plant growth, and it also has the benefit of being urea-free. Okay, this is an amazing all-purpose fertilizer, and I use it now for all of my tropical foliage plants, and they respond absolutely beautifully with that. Okay. So let me talk about also now how I water, okay? So a lot of people I've seen this trend of using moisture meters, and you could use them, but I don't really see the point. I don't really see the point. So spare yourself the added expense, spare yourself just having another gadget around that you really don't need. The only thing that you really need is this, okay? You need your finger. Use your finger to test the soil, okay? So I will literally just stick my finger inside of the pot and feel the soil, okay? So if the top maybe 2 inches, 1 to 2 inches, depending on how big your pot is. So this pot is probably a 14-inch pot, so I might let the top 2 inches of it dry out. If you have a much smaller pot, you might maybe, allow the top inch to dry out or so, okay? So I wait until the top 1 or 2 inches, depending, again, on the size of your pot, to dry out, and then I'll water again. That's really all you need to know. That's all you need to know. No need for moisture meters, okay? All right, so that's very important. Now, how to water. How to water. You want to water thoroughly, okay? There's no other way. I water all my plants the exact same way. The only thing that I vary depending on the type of plant is how long I wait in between for the soil to dry out. So I shouldn't even say how long. I should say the only thing that I vary is how dry I let the soil get in between watering, okay? So succulents, for example, I'll water them the same way as any other plant that I have, but I'll let all the soil dry out completely. For this plant, I'll only wait until the top 1 or 2 inches of the soil dries out, and then I'll water, okay? So I water thoroughly. I take my watering can, circle it all the way around the pot, moisten the soil completely everywhere, right, until water runs through the drainage hole. This is the way to water. This is the only way to water, right? Because, again, you have to have all the elements together in order to have a thriving house plant, right? If you have your plant in good light, it will be able to use the water up quickly, okay? And dry out in a reasonable time. But of course, you also need a nicely draining soil mix, which I already described how to do that, okay? So these are all very, very, very important aspects of plant care that you really need to keep in mind in order to have your houseplant thrive. These are really easy plants to grow, okay? Now, another aspect of growing this beautiful plant is that it'll need support, right? So this is a climbing plant. This is a climbing plant. And then let me show you what I've done. So this is a climbing plant, and as you can see, I made a teepee with some bamboo sticks, okay? And a lot of people use a moss post, but I found that the teepee itself actually works really well because it's pretty stable. It's pretty stable because there's 3 posts. And what I did was I tied the top together with garden twine, okay? And I actually put this into the pot when I repotted it. It is a very stable structure, so as your plant grows, you can take some garden twine, like I did here, and basically supported it up against the teepee structure. So it will need support, and I would recommend adding it earlier than later, because it'll be easier and you're not going to be damaging any roots. Speaking of roots, you know, you might have a ton of aerial roots. If you can, just leave them. Sometimes, you know, you could take the roots and redirect them into the pot. They're flexible, but they can be pretty brittle sometimes too. So if you don't mind them, I would just leave them. These are probably going to have to be trimmed at some point because they're all over my floor. But if you can, try to redirect them into the soil. If not, then, you know, there's no harm in trimming them a little bit. It's not going to kill your plant, so don't worry about that, okay? So these are all the tips and tricks that, they're not really even tricks, it's just basic plant care, right? Basic plant care. So in order to grow a gigantic Monstera Deliciosa. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and before you go, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel below. Click on the bell so that you get notified for future videos when I post them. And also don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Ohio Tropics, okay? And then also follow me on my houseplant blog, www.ohiotropics.com. I'm showing the link below here. That's my houseplant blog where I write about a wide variety of houseplants and houseplant issues. You can subscribe by email for free. I have a newsletter that I send out to all my subscribers on pretty much a weekly basis, helping with houseplant care and helping with my readers' questions. So I hope you found this helpful. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye, guys.